Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Middleware Technologies. Today we'll be looking at how we can collect or send the Opentelemetry data to an OTLP collector and Jaeger tracing system. So here in this video we will be trying to install a Python based class application and instrument it using Opentelemetry, and we will be further transferring that data into the OTLP collector. From there, the OTLP collector, we will be sending this data to a backend exporter, that is Jaeger. So Jaeger is basically going to help us in analyzing and reviewing our trace and span data which we collected from the Flask application. So let us see how we can approach in this video. So I'm currently working on Fedora 39 workstation with Python 3.x installed, and we need to have Docker and Docker Compose installed on our system because we are going to use OTLP collector and Jaeger as a Docker service. So let us see what is the first step. The first step is we are going to use application which is provided by the Flask documentation. So we are going to clone this repository, and we are going to use the application or the Flask application that is available in this tutorial folder, and we are going to create this Python virtual environment and activate that virtual environment to install the required packages. So let me go into my shell. I have already you can see I have already cloned the repository and I have created this virtual environment. So let me just activate this virtual environment. So we have now activated our virtual environment, and here we have installed this list of applications using the following commands, and we have executed the Flask application to validate it. Okay, so let me run this Flask application. So you need to install the required packages and initialize the DB, and then you can run the Flask application using the following command. Okay, so this basically launches the application at the following URL. So you can just go to your browser and try to access the application. So here you can see this is a blogging based application wherein you can register a new user and then you can log in with that new user. So let me say I have created this user already, and I'm able to log in with that new user, and you can create a new post over here. Okay, so hello telemetry, this is second blog. So let me save this. So here you can see this is the post that we have created. So this is the very basic application that we are going to use to instrument it. And also you can see as we were trying to access the application, it was logging the request that we have tried to access it. Okay, so let me clear my screen and go to the documentation again. So we have validated our application. The next step is going to be installing the Opentelemetry instrumentation packages. So we need to install the following OpenDistro package, which basically installs the required tools, that is instrumentation tool, this is instrumentation tool, and the Opentelemetry bootstrap tool. The Opentelemetry bootstrap tool is basically used to install the required instrumentation libraries based on the packages that are available in the site packages that is installed on your system. Okay, so I have already taken care of installing these packages. So I can show you what is the list of installed packages that I have right now. So you can see I have the Opentelemetry distro, API, SDK, and these are the instrumentation libraries that got installed based on the packages or the site packages that I'm currently having on my environment. Okay, now we can run the application using the Opentelemetry instrumentation. So let me run my application using the following command. Let me clear my screen. So what exactly we are doing over here is we are going to run our application, that is flask app flask run, using this Opentelemetry tool, and we are going to send the trace metrics and logs data to console. And we are going to provide our service or the instrumentation service name as flask block. So let me run this one, and you can try to access the application again. So let us try to access the application, and you can see like it has started logging the JSON traces for the application that we are accessing. So if you can see, like this is the Jaeger template that is getting accessed when we are trying to access the default home page. Okay, now let us try to do login, and it has actually accessed the auth login page. So if you go down, like it will show like the auth login Jaeger template being loaded. So these are the data that you are actually the trace and span data that you are getting on the console. But what exactly we are going to do now is we are going to send this data to the OTLP collector, and from there like we are going to send or transport it to the backend exporter, which is Jaeger. So let us see like how we can do that further. Let me clear my screen, and I have already stopped my application. Now what we are going to do is we need to install the exporter packages. So basically what we are going to do is we are going to install these packages, which will help us in installing the required packages for the Opentelemetry collector. So if I do the list installation again, so I'm going to show you like the packages that we have currently. Like once you install the Opentelemetry exporter package, it is going to install the HTTP and the gRPC and the proto common packages by default for you. So these are the exporters or the backends that by default gets installed when you are going to install the Opentelemetry exporter OTLP package. Now what we are going to do is we need to configure our Opentelemetry collector in such a way that we should be able to send the data to the OTLP collector. So for this, like we need to create this config file. So let me open this config file. So this config file consists of 3 sections: the receiver section, the exporter section, this is the receiver section, exporter section, and the processor section. So in the receiver, like basically like we are going to send the OTLP data or the telemetry data through the gRPC protocol from the Opentelemetry instrumentation tool by default, and then we are going to export it using this options, wherein we have configured the debug option, wherein it will basically provide the details in verbosity, and we are going to export it into the OTLP Jaeger, which we will be further looking at. But right now let me just disable this one. Sorry. So let me comment out this one. Okay, so now what we are going to do is we are going to send the data, like basically the Opentelemetry collector is going to receive the data from gRPC protocol, and it is going to log the data in the debug like verbosity mode in the Opentelemetry collector container. And we are going to use the batch processor. It is basically like compressing the logs like trace and span data which it receives from the Opentelemetry instrumentation application. So once that is done, this is our pipeline. So basically for traces, metrics and logs, we are going to use the following receiver, exporter and processors. So let me save this. Now what we are going to do is we are going to look at the Docker Compose file for the OTLP collector. So here like for now you can ignore this Jaeger service which we have. The only thing that you can configure for now is the collector. So collector is basically using the following configuration file which we have just looked at it, and this is the port on which the OTLP collector receives the data 4371, and the instrumentation tool which we are using in order to launch our application is also going to use this port in order to send the data to the OTLP collector. And this depends on, basically you can just comment it out as long as you are not using this one. But in case like if you will be taking a look at it when we configure Jaeger, so for that purpose we need to have this depends on section. Okay, so let me clear my screen, and now like what we are going to do is we are going to bring up our Opentelemetry collector. Okay, I think I have not started my Docker service, so let me start my Docker service. Okay, now let me bring up my services again. So for now you can ignore the Jaeger service, so we will be concentrating on the Opentelemetry collector. So that is up now, so you can see like OTLP let me check the services again. So it looks like the Jaeger service didn't come up, the OTLP collector service didn't come up, so there seems to be some issue with my collector config file, wherein actually like I'm not supposed to use this exporter. So let me comment this one also. We'll be enabling it further like later on, like when we configure the Jaeger service. So for now like we are going to use exporters, the debug one. So let me uncomment this one. Okay, so now we have our configuration file corrected. Let me bring up the service again. So let me do first tear down the services, and now let us bring it up again using Docker Compose up. Okay, now if you look at the Docker services, it should be up and running. So we have the collector that is running, and it is going to listen on 4317, and we have Jaeger, which we will take a look at it further in the next steps. Now once the OTLP collector is up and running, the next step is we need to rerun our instrumented application now. Okay, so basically like when we have installed the packages related to OTLP collector, like it basically installs the HTTP and gRPC receiver protocols And OpenTelemetry instrumentation by default uses those as the backends, basically in order to send the trace and metric data. So OpenTelemetry instrumentation will by default send the data for traces and span into the OpenTelemetry OTLP collector endpoint. So now we are going to run our OpenTelemetry instrumentation tool with only the following log exporter configured to send it to OTLP collector. So let us run this. So here you can see like we have so you can just try to access the application again. So we have accessed our application. So what we'll do is we'll just try to look at the logs for collector. So you can see like it has provided us the logs in a very clean manner. Basically like whatever the trace or span data or the logs that we were seeing on the console, like here initially before the OTLP collector was configured, like this data was written onto the console in the JSON format. But now like if you see into the collector logs, so the same data like with the trace ID and span ID and the Jinja template that is getting like called based on the request, so it is collected and compressed in a very neat manner. So now like the OTLP collector is like receiving our data from the telemetry application. The next thing that we are going to do is we are going to enable Jaeger as an exporter, backend exporter for the OTLP collector, and further send this data from the collector to the Jaeger endpoint or the tracing system. So let me shut down the services. So I'm going to shut down the Docker Compose service. And let us stop our application also. Now let us go into our documentation again and see like what is our next step, that is configuring the Jaeger service. So here like what we are going to do is we are going to update the Docker Compose file to include the Jaeger service. So let me open my Docker Compose file. So as I said, like we need to configure this Jaeger service when we want to use it. So now you can configure this Jaeger service, which basically uses the following image and it listens on the following port. Okay, so now let me show you the configuration. We need to update the configuration file also for the OTLP collector, so that the OTLP collector is going to send the data to the Jaeger service. So for that, like we need to enable this exporter, and here for the trace data, like we are going to send this data to the exporter OTLP Jaeger. And here you can see the endpoint the endpoint host name is Jaeger all in one with port 4317. Okay, the reason being is like when we are starting the Jaeger service, the service name that we are giving is Jaeger all in one. So the OTLP collector is going to talk to the Jaeger service with the following name, and it will send the data to Jaeger 1 on 4317. 4317 is the internal port that is running on Jaeger backend in order to receive the data from the OTLP collector. But the port that we have configured over here is the UI port from where we will be accessing the Jaeger UI portal. Okay, now let me clear my screen, and now what we are going to do is we are going to start up the Docker Compose service. So now we need to ensure that our both the services are up and running. So we have the Jaeger Tracing system that is running, and we have, okay, looks like our the Opentelemetry didn't come up, so let me look at it. Let me stop this. And let us try to run it in the front, and let us see like what exactly is failing. So error, mapping key export is already defined. Okay, so let me stop this. And let us open the let me open the OTLP collector configuration. Okay, so the problem is like we have these two exporters configured. Instead, like we need to have only one exporter, so we are going to use the OTLP Jaeger exporter. So let me remove that line, and I have saved it. Now we are going to bring up the Docker Compose up again, and it should be up and running now. So let us check the Docker PS. So we have our collector and the Jaeger tracing backend up and running. So one thing that we can verify is like we can just verify the Jaeger service. So before that, let's try to start our application also. So we are going to run the same command that we have run for OTLP collector. So we are going to send the log exporter to OTLP, and now if you try to access, so before that let me open the Jaeger service also, the Jaeger the UI portal I say. So this is the UI portal wherein we will be able to access the Jaeger service. So here right now like you don't see any data, so it hasn't collected any data yet. So let me try to access my application. Register some user, login with that user, create a new post, and log out. Now if you refresh, like you will be able to see the service flask log for which the following operations were carried out. So basically like we are using the template, so Jaeger is trying to capture the operations in the form of the compile, load and render. So if I go into render and try to find the traces for this, so you will see the following traces are available, which you can further go into the details. So basically the base.html template is getting loaded from the following path, and this is the Ginger2 template that we are currently using. So this is how the trace data and the span data that gets transferred from the OTLP collector is captured on the Jaeger end, wherein you will be able to like further look at and analyze your data. So So this is how like you will be able to actually configure your OTLP collector and the Jaeger service in order to send your telemetry data from the OTLP collector to the backend Jaeger tracing system. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you all. Thanks for watching this video, and you guys have a great day.